Greetings, fellow Star Wars enthusiasts. We'd like to warmly welcome you back to our journey in the galaxy that's oh so far away. Today's video plunges into the depths of the dark side, exploring the galaxy's 11 most ancient Sith. Undoubtedly, we all know the Siths as masters of deception, power, and manipulation, which is why tracing their history presents a formidable challenge. This video embarks on a millennium-long journey through Sith lore, from the ancient Sith species to our cinematic encounters with power-hungry Sith lords. We'll uncover the secrets, powers, and sometimes bizarre stories of these dark side users who've been causing trouble for the Jedi Order for centuries. So, whether you're a Sith enthusiast or just curious about the darker side of the Force, you're in for a treat. So, grab your lightsaber, channel your inner Sith, and let's jump into the dark and mysterious past of the 11 oldest Sith in the Star Wars universe. Don't forget to stay tuned for more Star Wars lore, and let's get started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
There are 3 blades within my sarcophagus. Only one is truly my soul.
1. Ajunta Pao, born more than 7,000 BBY. His actual birth date is not known. You know, when it comes to the very first Sith, it's a bit of a history rabbit hole. It all started with a bunch of red-skinned aliens. Yeah, they were the OG Sith. These guys got their butts kicked by some exiled dark Jedi who, in a twist of irony, decided to steal their name and form the Sith we know today. One of the exiled Jedi, Ajunta Pao, was a real trailblazer. He and a crew of his buddies bailed on the Jedi Order and set up shop on a distant planet. They called themselves the Sith and went about conquering worlds and causing all sorts of mayhem. Ajunta Pao was kind of like their leader and was even seen as some left-handed god by the Kasai. He made a name for himself by subjugating the original Sith species on their home planet, Korriban. Ajunta Pao's legacy was cemented as the first Dark Lord of the Sith, a title he carried with pride. But, unfortunately for him, he didn't break any longevity records. He kicked the bucket at around a century old, give or take a few years. But the Sith Empire, it kept on thriving long after his funeral. In a wild twist, even after he died, his spirit got a redemption arc. Jedi Knight Revan managed to bring him back from the dark side sometime around the Jedi Civil War. Talk about a plot twist. So, Ajunta Pao might not have lived forever, but his name still echoes through the Star Wars galaxy.
Fools!
2. Darth Vish, 5113 BBY. Okay, gather round, folks, because we've got a real heavy hitter in Sith history here. Tenebrae, aka Vishiet, the Sith Emperor, and even Valkorian to some. This guy was like the dark side MVP for a whopping 1,500 years, way back in the Old Republic era. Now, Tenebrae wasn't exactly born with a silver spoon. He was actually the illegitimate son of Lord Dramath from the old Sith Empire. But you won't believe this. He's got a pretty shocking origin story. At just 6 years old, he force-choked his dear old dad to death. Talk about a problem child. By the time he hit the ripe old age of 10, he had already become a one-kid wrecking crew on the planet Medrios. He tortured and massacred thousands, earning himself quite a sinister reputation. But then, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Ragnos, saw his potential and knighted him as Lord Vishiet, making him the ruler of Medrios. Vishiet later renamed the planet Nathema and ruled there for a century, staying away from all the Sith power struggles. What's crazier is that Vishiet had a serious knack for the dark side of the Force. That's what kept him ticking for so long. After Naga Sadal's big mess, Vishiet pulled a slick move and lured the remaining Sith Lords to Nathema. He threw a planet-wide ritual party where he siphoned their life force to extend his own. It's like he was stealing their years to stay young. Pretty evil, right? Then he proclaimed himself the Sith Emperor and led the leftover Sith survivors to Dromund Kaas, setting up an entire new Sith Empire. Oh, and if you thought that was it, he even managed to turn Revan and Malik to the dark side. This guy's resume is like a who's who of Sith mayhem.
Marka Ragnos.
A mere Jedi child will not undo my return.
3. Marka Ragnos, prior to 5100 BBY. We've got an absolute legend here, Marka Ragnos. This guy was like the ultimate Sith Lord in the ancient Star Wars universe, and he didn't just sit around twiddling his Sith thumbs. Born way after Ajunta Pao's time, Ragnos rose to power and became the top dog in the Sith Empire. Ajunta Pao was ancient history when this guy took the throne. What's interesting is that Ragnos was a bit of a mix. He was a Sith-human hybrid. He lived for over 100 years, which is pretty impressive in Sith terms. He earned his big shot title by defeating and beheading his Sith Lord rival, Simis, in a knockdown, drag-out battle. Talk about a power move. But here's the kicker. Ragnos wasn't just a Sith Lord. He was a Sith Lord on steroids. He led the Sith into countless battles and conflicts, spreading his dark influence all over the galaxy. And get this, he had the power to come back as a Force ghost after he died. So, even in death, he was still causing trouble. 1,000 years after he kicked the bucket, this guy called Exar Kun managed to summon Ragnos back from the dead using some mystical talismans. Ragnos then crowned Exar Kun as the new Dark Lord in an attempt to bring back the good old days of the Sith Empire. Now, that's what we call a legacy that just won't quit. 4. Ludo Crush, unknown, but died at 5,000 BBY. Let's talk about Ludo Crush, the Sith Lord, who didn't quite make it to the big throne. But boy, did he have a role to play in Star Wars. This guy had quite the lineage, being a mix of dark Jedi and good old Sith blood. Now, Ludo wasn't exactly best friends with his fellow Sith Lord, Naga Sadal. In all honesty, he harbored an intense dislike for Sadal. The two were each other's arch nemeses in the relentless pursuit of the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. Even their perspectives failed to align. They did not see eye to eye on anything at all. Crush prioritized safety and adherence to the traditional methods of the Sith Empire. He didn't want to mess with the Republic or venture into the big bad galaxy. Nah, he was all about keeping the Empire cozy in its own little corner. Sadal, on the other hand, was a real go-getter, itching for a fight with the Republic. He was all about dominance and didn't mind causing a ruckus. So, you can imagine the fireworks between these two. Words, clashes, and more. These guys had it all. But when Sadal snagged the title of Dark Lord, Crush decided to play it safe and retreat with his followers. But don't think of him as a pushover. He pulled off a sneaky move by faking his death and resurfacing when the Sith took a beating from the Republic in the Great Hyperspace War. The Battle of Korriban was the ultimate showdown, and for a moment, it looked like Crush had the upper hand. But Sadal, in a real twist, pulled a kamikaze move and took him down. The Sith really know how to keep things dramatic, right? 5. Naga Sadal, unknown, but leadership is around 5,000 BBY. Now, let's talk about Naga Sadal, the Sith Lord, who outlasted even Marka Ragnos in the How Long Can I Be a Sith contest. Like Ragnos, he was a Sith-human mix, but hailing from the planet Ziost. Sadal had some pretty intense training under the Sith warlord Simus, and he ruled his own secret hideout on the moon, Karshian. This guy wasn't just a Sith Lord, he was a Sith magician, and a darn powerful one at that. He was even part of the Sith Council during Marka Ragnos' reign, which was a big deal. Now, what really set Sadal apart was his expansionist mindset. He didn't want to keep the Sith Empire hidden away. He wanted to conquer the whole galaxy, and that didn't sit well with a bunch of the old school Sith. The cool part, or maybe kind of cheaty part, about Sadal was that he pulled off a 600-year-long nap in suspended animation. So, we know that he was at least 600 years old, and what's even wilder is that he got woken up by Freedon Nad, who promptly showed him the exit door once he learned everything he could from Sadal. Sadal ended up being buried on Yavin 4 by his Massassi ranks, but even in death, his legacy and lost Sith belongings kept drawing the attention of other Sith and archaeologists. So yeah, this guy knew how to make a lasting impression. 6. Freedon Nad, before 4400 BBY. Folks, let's dive into the mysterious and twisted story of Freedon Nad. This dude started out as a Jedi, can you believe it? But like many Sith Lords, he got seduced by the dark side and decided he wanted that great power. So, he bailed on the Jedi Order to embrace the Sith way. Once he went Sith, Nad went on a wild galactic tour to soak up ancient Sith knowledge from the leftovers of the old Sith Empire, created by the Dark Jedi. His thirst for power and wisdom led him to the forest moon, Yavin 4, where Naga Sadal's spirit was hanging out. And Sadal, being the excellent teacher he was, cranked up the dark side lessons for Nad. But you know how it goes with these Sith apprentices. They get power hungry. When Nad thought he'd learned all he could from Sadal, he used his newfound powers to thwart his Sith master. Nad, now declaring himself the Dark Lord of the Sith, set his sights on finding a planet he could claim as his own. It was time for him to hit the road, and Onderon became his destination. From Aziz, Onderon's capital city, Nad ruled with an iron fist for over a century. Now, this guy's lifespan presents a true enigma. We can definitively confirm that he lived for a minimum of 1 century. However, many believe that his lifespan might have even breached the unbelievable mark of 200 years. The guy's history is shrouded in ancient holocrons, and you know how Sith likes to keep their secrets. When he met his physical demise, they buried him below the royal palace of Aziz, and that place became a hub of Sith power. Nad's spirit stuck around in the tomb, where he continued to teach his bloodline descendants the dark ways of the Force. So, even in death, he was still causing trouble and making Onderon a real dark side hotspot. Talk about leaving a legacy. 7. Exar Kun, or prior to 4000 BBY. Exar Kun, like so many others before him, basically transitioned from an honorable Jedi to a Sith Lord. Kun consistently found himself embroiled in problems, almost as if he were a magnet for all sorts of trouble. Initially aligned with the Jedi Order, the trajectory of Kun's life altered dramatically when he began dabbling in forbidden Sith practices, an action that unmasked the darkest tendencies within him. He was arrogantly confident in his abilities and had a real chip on his shoulder. His composure was pretty short-lived, and oh boy, did he have the ability to lose control at the drop of a hat. As time progressed, his thirst for knowledge of the dark side intensified and eventually turned into an insatiable obsession. Unconcerned by Jedi directives, he seemed almost eager to break any and all rules just so he could lay his grimy hands on some Sith artifacts. He was so thirsty for that dark side knowledge that he decided to chase after Frieden Nad's mentorship. Nad sent him on a wild goose chase to the ancient Sith world of Korriban. There, Nad tricked Kun into collecting some significant injuries, only patching him up when he fully embraced the dark side. It messed with Kun, but he was too pumped about getting closer to those Sith secrets to care. When he fully turned to the dark side, Kun never looked back. He wasn't into fancy titles or Jedi robes. He just wanted power, power, and more power. Kun even tried to pull a fast one on the Jedi by using some ancient ritual to free his spirit from his body, making them think he was a goner. For a few thousand years, his spirit remained trapped on Yavin 4, mainly because this man possessed an exceptional talent for pettiness, a quality that elevated him to the status of a formidable villain. Oh, and don't forget, he was also the mastermind behind the invention of the double-bladed lightsaber. Darth Zion lived in the time of the old Sith Wars, around 4000 BBY. Alright, let's talk about Darth Zion, the Sith marauder with a twisted story. This guy was pretty involved in the Great Sith War, fighting for Exar Kun's gang, but the dude had a unique skill. He couldn't die. Seriously, when he got struck down, he just clawed his way back to life using all his pain, anger, and hate. And let us tell you, that's not the kind of immortality you want to sign up for. It's a life filled with never-ending agony. But this just proves that Zion was born to be a Sith. He embraced his hatred from the get-go and turned it into a superpower. His body was a wreck, basically falling apart, but he glued it together with the dark side of the Force. He later teamed up with the new Sith Empire of Darth Revan and Darth Malik, and watched it crumble from the sidelines. But things got interesting when he found pals in Darth Traya and Darth Nihilus. Together, they formed the Sith Triumvirate, a trio hell-bent on taking down the Jedi and bringing back the Sith. Zion was like a pain vampire, feeding on his own suffering and trying to spread it to all the Jedi out there. At first, he was Traya's student, but being the power-hungry guy he was, he eventually turned on her. The remaining two Sith joined forces, rallied the other Sith, and gave the Jedi a run for their money. But then came Mitra Surik, and she showed Zion the crazy price he paid for immortality. She convinced him to let it go, and he finally found some peace and kicked the bucket. Surprisingly, Zion had a weird desire to heal the galaxy, thinking it was all broken and that someone should fix it. So, beneath all that Sith nastiness, there was a hint of good in there. Talk about a complex dude. 9. Darth Malik. Before 3993 BBY, let's chat about Darth Malik, the Sith guy who's not as famous as some others, but still had a prominent role, thanks to his buddy Revan. First off, this guy was born as Alec on a planet called Quelli, out in the Outer Rim. When the Mandalorians attacked his homeworld, he hightailed it out of there and ended up in the Galactic Republic. Before going all Sith, Malik and Revan were pals during their Jedi days. They were the dynamic duo during the Mandalorian Wars because they thought the Jedi Council was way too calm about the whole situation. They felt like they had to tackle matters with their own lightsabers. Malik even had no problem dabbling in the dark if it meant saving the day. He eventually adopted the name Malik to avoid some Jedi arrest warrants. At first, he thought names didn't matter, but after a while, he decided he wanted people to remember him as the Great Malik. Things took a dark turn when they bumped into the Sith Emperor, Tenebrae, who gave them a crash course on the dark side. Revan became the big boss, while Malik became his apprentice. Together, they ditched the Republic, started their own Sith Empire, and declared war on the Jedi, believing the Jedi Order was a bunch of tyrants. But then came the ultimate Sith plot twist. Malik decided he wanted the whole Sith Empire to himself. He betrayed Revan and snatched the title of Dark Lord, conquering worlds left and right. Well, as they say, pride comes before a fall. Revan, now a Jedi again, dueled Malik, and it was game over for the Dark Lord. With Malik out of the picture, the Republic won the Jedi Civil War, and that's the tale of Darth Malik, a guy who just couldn't resist the allure of power and paid the price for it.
Through victory, my chains are broken.
10. Darth Revan, approximately 3994 BBY. Buckle up, folks, because we're diving into the wild ride that was Revan's life. This guy was like a one-man show with a bunch of names. Darth Revan, Revan the Butcher, the Revanchist, and even the Prodigal Knight. And let us tell you, he's got all these titles because he lived a whopping 350 years. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Revan was just a regular Jedi, but he wasn't too thrilled with the whole Jedi Council's do-nothing policy during the Mandalorian Wars. So, he went all rebel and started the Revanchist movement, defying the Council and taking the name Revan. Things got really dicey when he disobeyed the Jedi and jumped into the war. Long story short, he put a stop to the fighting, but he also dabbled in some dark side stuff along the way. He then did a complete 180 and became Darth Revan. He teamed up with Malik, went all Sith, and waged war on the Republic in the Jedi Civil War. But, to no one's surprise, Malik stabbed him in the back, and he got captured. The Jedi Order salvaged him by reversing the Sith's transformation. However, centuries later, another mishap occurred when he found himself split in two, quite literally. One part yearned to merge with the Force, and another succumbed entirely to the dark side. So, Revan now resurfaced as the leader of the Order of Revan. In an attempt to overthrow the Sith Emperor, he rallied his zealous followers but was challenged by both the Empire and the Republic. Eventually, the two halves of Revan managed to get together and discover peace. Ultimately, Revan's spirit helped the galaxy's heroes vanquish the Sith Emperor, and upon fulfilling his cosmic duty, he peacefully merged with the Force.
Do you feel it is a...
11. Darth Nihilus, before 3960 BBY. Let's talk about Darth Nihilus, the guy who took the whole hunger for power thing to a whole new level. Before he went all Sith Lord, he lost everything during the Republic's fight against the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. But the real turning point was when he got a front row seat to the Shadow Generator superweapon, wiping out pretty much everything around him. This left him with a craving for Force energy, and it turned him into a deep and profound Force wound. He stopped feeling fear and emotions, becoming this man filled with pure intent and hatred. Then, along comes Darth Traya, another Sith Lord, who offers to teach him how to feed his endless hunger. He thinks why not, and becomes her apprentice. Over time, they team up with another Sith, Darth Zion, and form a Sith trio. Traya's the boss. Nihilus takes up the Lord of Hunger as his title, and Zion's like the third wheel. They grow stronger, overpower their master, and cut her off from the Force, sending her into exile. By now, Nihilus's condition is so bad that he has to trap his spirit in his mask and armor to stay alive. He's basically a Force-eating machine at this point. Now, this guy is all about fear. When people see him, they're unable to contain their sheer terror. He and Zion eventually go on a Jedi killing spree and almost wipe out the whole Jedi Order, but ultimately, someone manages to take him down. His spirit lives on in his armor, which they bury on the Sith homeworld, Korriban, and you can even chat with the spirit using a holocron he made. Nihilus had a bit of a dark philosophy. He thought life's only purpose was death, and power was the way to get there. Yeah, he was a real ray of sunshine, that one.
I gain power.
Marvelous verdict. This concludes our whirlwind tour, unveiling the Star Wars universe's oldest and most powerful Sith Lords. From the legendary Revan to the insatiable Darth Nihilus, these dark side warriors have left their undeniable mark on the galaxy. Seeing how these Sith survived for centuries by engaging with and manipulating the dark side, all while unleashing endless chaos, is definitely pretty mind-boggling, isn't it? The uniqueness of their stories, ambitions, and quirks has made them some of the most captivating characters in Star Wars lore. So, if you are a fervent fan of the saga or merely intrigued by the Sith's dark history, we're sure our video of these formidable Sith Lords has been pretty informative for you. It's safe to say at this point that the Force serves us all as a powerful ally. However, how we make use of it is what determines our legacy within the expansive universe of Star Wars. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.